Going. Well, it's 7 p.m. Eastern time here on Wednesday, March 22nd, and this is the inaugural used car. Oh, just call it Car Dealer Roundtable. And we've got Brandon from Cars Question and whatever the hell your name is. And
Close.
we've got Lucky and Lopez, and we have Craig from Flying Wheels, and well, Zach and I, because well, we're like horse poop. We're everywhere.
All right, here's the deal, folks. We've got an incredible forum, an incredible roundtable. We're going to move into this view, and whoever... Oh, Brandon, it's you first. Brandon from Car Questions Answered, please. Can you give us a brief overview of who you are, what you're doing in the auto industry, your YouTube channel too? Then we'll go to Craig, then we'll go to Lucky. And then we've got a great night, lots of questions we want to answer, and a huge thank you from CarEdge for each of you joining us. Brandon, go for it.
Yeah, so I've been a used car dealer. Turn that sound off. I can hear it. Sorry, my wife is over here moderating. So I have been a used car dealer for 12 years now, and predominantly my used car dealership, we sell cars to the people who need cars for under about $5,000. Most of the stuff that we sell is stuff that people can get into without a car payment. I don't like debt. I don't want to have my cars where people have to actually borrow money to get them. So I typically deal with cars that are in the $5,000 and under range when I'm going to these auctions. As far as my YouTube channel is concerned, my goal is literally just to help the consumer and to not get ripped off by car dealers, by mechanics. I like to give tips. I like to take a lot of video footage of behind the scenes when I go to car auctions to show you what's going on when I buy cars, show you what other dealers are paying for cars. I like to do car market updates. And really, I just want to add some transparency to the car market from a used car dealer's perspective. And that's really my goal, is just to help people not get ripped off.
And you've become quite the interior decorator. Brandon's been on the CarEdge channel multiple times as we do live streams, and the background keeps getting better and better. Craig, I'm going to pull you in next. Can we get an intro from you? Thanks for that, Brandon. Craig, share with us a little bit about yourself, Flying Wheels, and thanks for joining us.
Sure. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Masterminds Roundtable, as I've been calling it, the meeting of the minds of the YouTube car dealers. So I promise you, if we do this again, or if I ever get invited back, I will have a better camera and better lighting. This is not my forte. I usually have a GoPro right here. So I own a car dealership. I am generations of car guys, but the first car dealer. My father is an auto tech teacher. My grandfather is an auto tech teacher. My brother does auto body. My great grandfather owned gas stations. So it's we've always said, like, oil and gasoline is in our veins. I've been featured on a few television shows with my brother and mother. I was on a show called Mud, Sweat, and Gears, which was a good time. My brother and I built a race car and raced it. My mother and I did the first EV cannonball run for a television show. We were the first to LA teaser. But I started a car dealership in Florida in 2007, 2008. I've always done kind of like a side business in high school, like buy a car, drive it, then sell it, buy another one. Paid through college that way. After college, I wanted the regular business world work, a 9-to-5, and I was making more money buying a car, the hunt, buying a car, fixing it, cleaning it, selling it, than I was working 70 hours a week. So I went all in, started my first car dealership at like 23, I think I was. And I had one car, and it's just grown from there. Bought two to four, 4 to 8. That's kind of my whole story, and it's grown to what it is now. And then as far as YouTube goes, I started YouTube with just listening to what people wanted. I made a video by accident and read the comments and kind of snowballed off of those.
That's awesome, Craig. Really, really awesome. Thanks for joining us. And I'm going to pull Lucky in. Lucky, give us the same update and overview on your background. And then, guys, we're going to talk about it, the car market. We are going to hear from Papa Shefska as well, get his background. But Lucky, you first. Share with us what's going on, how you got started in the industry and the channel as well, please.
All right, I'll keep it under 2 minutes. Started the car business back in 2000 on an auto repair shop, body shop, rental car shop. Been doing dealerships for probably almost 20 years now. Love the business. And pretty much what got me into YouTube was I like the fact of educating people. So after I sold my dealership, I started doing consulting where I traveled around the different states, teaching dealerships how to do finance, how to buy deals, how to work with banks, structure their floor plans, actually how to buy cars so they don't get burned, marketing, everything else. And during the pandemic, I sold my dealership. I made my first video back in 2018, just explaining all this information. Back then, I think Craig was the only one that was actually giving out good info. There's a bunch of freaking shysters that were just giving really bad info out there. So I just wanted to set the record straight with my dealer's license. That video went over 100K. And then I just kind of went full time during the pandemic. I was actually supposed to be traveling South America, having fun, relaxing, because I've been doing this literally since I've been 18, haven't stopped since then. And YouTube just kind of spooled up. And now, same thing. My whole goal with this channel is to help educate people, not only on the consumer level, but also dealers, because the more I meet dealers, there's not a lot of stuff they talk about. And unfortunately, these guys will verify for me, like, dealers don't like to share information, which I don't understand why. So my whole goal is to educate the consumers, but also help the dealers learn some more processes and get better banks and basically learn about the whole thing. So this way, at the end of the day, they don't hate us for trying to sell cars. We don't hate them for trying to rip us off and nickel and dime us. And the world is a better place.
Love it, Lucky. Absolutely love it. Pops, finish us off. I think you might have the most experience in the auto industry out of the group, but collectively maybe over 100 years here, which is pretty incredible to think.
Well, you know, I started in the car business in 1977, so I've been doing it a while. I did retire 4 or 5 years ago, and Zach was very concerned about me suffering from cognitive decline. So he insisted that we start doing YouTube videos. First of all, he had to explain to me what YouTube was. And now, for whatever reason, you know, monthly, millions of people hang on my every word. I'm not sure why. Most of those folks should probably get their heads examined, but that could be a topic for another roundtable. And the reason we do what we do is, you know, I learned a long time ago in the car business, there's a couple different ways you can approach it as a dealership. You can either try and take advantage of everybody in your market one time because they would never come back and buy a second car from you, or you could work with customers and try and figure out how to sell a handful of customers a whole bunch of cars. And so many years ago, I realized I thought the best way, at least philosophically for me, was to try and give people sound advice, counsel them when they needed counseling, logically figure out whether a deal made sense or didn't make sense. And from that, my career kind of took off, and now I get to try and help people every day. And well, I kind of like it.
Absolutely love it. All right. So a couple house rules, excuse me, for tonight's show. So it's already happening. Folks are leaving really thoughtful contributions like Thomas. Super chats go to each individual channel. So if you're watching from Lucky's channel or Brandon's channel or Craig's channel, your super chat will go to them, which is fantastic. Now, Brandon, I don't think this works out well for you because I think Thomas sent this to us. So the Bourbon Fund is alive and well, but Thomas, he sent it to Ray and Zach, which we really appreciate. We appreciate all contributions that come through. We have Adam here saying, FlyingWheels, what's up, big dog? A great group of hard people on this cast. Let's go. So we really appreciate the super chats. And again, they will go to each individual person on the screen. Now let's kick it off here. And I want to turn our attention to you first, Brandon. What the heck is going on in the car market? And give us your perspective. We all watch each other's videos. We know prices are crazy high for used cars. We had the chip shortage and a lack of new cars. What have you seen in your segment of the market? Last time we connected, you were talking a lot about tax season maybe not materializing as much. Give us an update from your end. And then Lucky and Craig, if you guys can build off of that, that would be great.
So I'm not going to raise up. I'm not going to go back through why car prices are high. I would assume most people that are in here watch our channels, they know why car prices are high. So for tax time for us, usually we'll have about 150 cars that we try to sell, and we'll move through all of them within about 2 to 3 weeks. And this year has been different. Tax money has been a lot shorter. We still got a big push. We sold a lot of cars, but we've had to do something this year that we've never had to do. We had a little bit slower time. We couldn't move through all of our inventory, and we actually started cutting prices last week because we're not going to be stuck within this inventory. I see prices dropping pretty soon because all these dealers have gotten overexposed, expecting big tax checks to come like they do every year. And everything that I'm hearing from all these other dealers, all my buddies that are at these auctions, they're not selling cars. They're not moving through a lot of this inventory that they bought up. So with me seeing that and seeing less dealers at auction over just the last week and a half for us, we started cutting prices last week, and it was a good thing. We sold 30% of our inventory in 3 days, and we sold 30 cars over the course of 3 days. We're going to just keep doing that because I'm not going to get stuck in this inventory that I'm in right now. And then I think a few weeks from now, prices are going to continue to come down. I think we're at peak pricing in the used car market, especially on a wholesale side. Now, I want to hear from Lucky and Craig, their opinions on this too, but I think that tax time has actually moved past us now, and the dealers that have inventory, especially the lower end used car inventory, they need to move through it, because I think prices are going to start coming down again now.
Go for it, Lucky. I saw the thumbs up.
Actually, can you do Craig first? I'll do a wrap up.
Let's hear it, Craig.
Oh, the pressure's on me now. I was going to go after you. All right. So I'm hoping, Brandon, it's regional. So I am just this week finally starting seeing tax refunds coming in. I can't believe how long it actually took for this to happen, which is seriously disappointing. I am usually sold out and trying to fill up inventory again by now. It is not the case this year. It is by far the slowest season I've ever had. Luckily, same as you, I had to lower the prices a week ago.
Did you get a bump like a month ago, like tax money a month ago?
Say it again.
Did you get a big hit like a month ago? Because we went through 3 days. We got tons of tax money in just 3 days, and then it went away.
I look forward to that first call. It's usually mid-February, end of February. That's like, hey, I'm waiting for my tax check to come in. That's exciting for me because now I know, like, all right, we're here. It's getting ready. People have filed and they're waiting for that tax return and can't wait to spend it. I didn't even get that call this year. Wow. So I'm asking people, hey, is this tax refund money? And it's probably a 60-40 yes and no. I'm using those smaller down payment. I'm using those smaller checks towards down payments on higher, more expensive inventory. I think what you have, your price range is perfect tax refund season inventory. Yeah. My inventory is a little more, and it's, I think, more difficult to sell than like under 10 grand, sub 10K, which is what I've always done well in. So maybe it's a cross between me having a different inventory this year and having a different market and a different refund season this year. I've noticed it being late, and I'm a little nervous that I hope I don't get stuck with what I have, but I also bought them slightly early. I bought them preseason.
Yep. Lucky, what's your read on the room? Let's hear it.
No, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but both these gentlemen are correct. Tax season is over. So I announced it a few times on my channel. So I've been buying and wholesaling cars mostly to dealers because I knew that these guys were going to be knuckleheads, overspend, and basically over-exacerbate their flooring lines. And so I have something that I want to recommend for you guys. I work with a bunch of tax attorneys and CPAs here in Vegas. So they basically can forward me checks during January, December when they're just doing their taxes or when they're starting. So we can basically have an idea of how big tax returns are going to get. And unfortunately, not only here in Vegas, but I've talked to dealers all across the United States in my dealer network, and not a single one is said they're like, well, we had like 2 weeks, almost like Brandon, where it's like we were popping, cars are moving, and it just died. And right now I sold about 150 cars at the auction. This week, I've had 52 no sales. Dealers don't have the money. Half the dealers are showing up. So I shipped some cars to Utah, California, Texas. Texas, they're still moving. Texas is like their own little economy out in the middle of nowhere. But everywhere else is seeing a rapid decline when it comes to sales. And even worse is the banks are getting extremely finicky when it comes to financing people, because we were all expecting these big down payments. So the dealers that have these overpriced cars, they're trying to sell them to, just regular consumers. They owe too much on them. Now the banks want 20, 30, 40% down. Customers don't qualify. Their DTI is out of whack. And it's just all kind of falling apart. So Brandon, cheap cars, 100%. That's what I do. 90% of my inventory is under 10 grand. I know Craig, he's got some nicer cars, but I think you can probably gross more. You go for better credit customers, which I still think your tax season is going to last longer than most of ours. But like I said, I have to agree with both the gentlemen. Unfortunately, tax season's gone. And if you're a dealer watching this, praying to God that the money's coming, it's not. Sell your shit.
Can I add to what Lucky just said as well?
Yeah, but Lucky has to turn off his notifications and promise not to curse again on the show. Go for it, Craig.
So Lucky just touched on it right at the end. I've noticed when I was doing lower dollar cars, like 6, 7, 8,000 and under vehicles, it was early tax season cars. Those are people that needed their money, that needed their inventory, that needed their cars, and they just couldn't wait to get that check and bought it. People that don't have to buy a car right away are typically the same people that don't have to file their tax returns and get their checks right away. So I did notice exactly what you said is the higher dollar cars. Just like me, I filed an extension. I haven't even filed my returns yet. So I don't need the tax refund to go buy something. And I think it does trickle towards the end of the season, the more expensive the car is.
And Zach, if I may,
Please.
you know, we were on top of this months ago, where we read what was going on. We read that refunds were going to be lower this year than they had been in years past, and if you weren't on top of that and you were thinking it was going to be a normal tax return season for car sales, you were just laboring under the wrong impression. And you know, just listening to these three gentlemen, it just confirms what we had been talking about. And hopefully nobody gets burned, nobody gets stuck with cars that they paid too much for. You just really in these times need to be cautious about what it is that you're spending for certain vehicles. And I think I said it to you in a comment today, Craig, on LinkedIn. You know, every used car any of you gentlemen buy, it's always a crapshoot. You don't know. Your hope is you're going to make a profit. Your hope is you're going to make a big profit. But you know, you get to look, as you said in the video, you get to look at a car for 30 seconds. Well, you can't see everything that might be wrong with the vehicle in 30 seconds. And you buy a car and then you bring it back to your shop, and suddenly there's much more that needs to be done to that vehicle for you to be able to retail it. So every vehicle you buy is an absolute crapshoot. You win on some, you lose on others. And as I said to you, it's kind of like life. You know, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. It's just that simple.
So if I may, I got a question for the group here. And this, I think, is the $1 million question. We've got a couple thousand people that are here with us. And why are they here with us? Because they probably want some insight into why the market is so crazy. So each of you have painted the picture of tax returns in the spring selling season has not been as material as in years past. However, the headlines have read, and we're a group of people that perpetuate some of these headlines, used car prices going back up at the wholesale auctions. Lucky, you hit on it. 52 cars, no sales. We look at the Black Book data week in, week out, the Manheim data. No sales are very prevalent. So who here?
I don't know how to turn it off. I turn off.
Yeah, I mean, what is that? Can somebody tell me?
It's an iPhone. It's an iMessage notification.
I turned it off.
Oh, okay.
All right, Lucky is gonna start a new YouTube channel
Lucky's
called Tech Time with Lucky Lopez.
Such a rookie YouTuber. Oh my
I
goodness.
know.
But here's my question, and I want to hear from each of you. Why are wholesale used car prices going up? And maybe, Lucky, we can go in reverse this time. You can kick us off. You mentioned that you were wholesaling a bunch of cars to dealers who, your words, not mine, knuckleheads. Like, why are wholesale used car prices going up if you guys are sharing these examples of what's actually happening on the retail side?
It's actually the whole reason why we're here. We're one of the handful of dealers that like to share information. When I tell the dealers, like, hey buddy, it's gonna look bad, we should probably not buy as many cars, they look at me and just, I know what I'm doing, and the ego takes over and they just keep buying. Every time this is why I tell everybody this. I don't buy cars at the auction. 90% of my cars I buy on the streets and through my other little endeavors, but everything else I sell at the auction because I know I can get top dollar, because these guys just have no idea. And especially during the pandemic, I've seen a lot of people make way too much money, and now they're just funneling that back into everybody else. And eventually a lot of these new dealers are going to go broke. But especially like next year, AFC, I've seen them extend multiple things of credit and be very lenient during these times because they don't want to start pulling cars back. I've talked to numerous next gear reps, and they're all saying the same thing. If tax season is not that great, they're going to start calling margins in on people, saying, hey, your portfolio is worth $200,000 less than your $1 million line, so we need to check for $200K. or we're going to snatch up these cars. And I believe that's what's going to happen here very shortly.
What do you think, Craig? What makes sense of something that I have personally struggled to make sense of over the past couple of weeks?
Yeah, so I actually noticed a lot of that at auction. Excuse me. So when I go to the auction, I've noticed retail ready cars are pulling all the money. Right now we are, let's call it mid-tax season. We'll go through the end of April typically and hope that we have a steady season throughout, whether that's the topic or not. What I find is I prep early in the season. So when tax season comes, my inventory is ready to roll and we'll sell out. So now we're talking like time crunch. We have to refill that inventory, reload the inventory. I don't have the time to recon, to repair, to go through an entire vehicle again. So I'm willing to spend a little more on a cleaner retail ready or a frontline ready car, as we call them, at the auction, so I can bring it, throw it up on my lift, make sure it's good, and then get it up for sale as quick as possible. And I'm not alone here. There's a lot of other dealers that are willing to pay more for a cleaner car or a more desirable car. I've noticed mid-sized, and I'm texting back and forth. If you notice me doing this, I'm texting my auction rep just to try to get some insight to see what they're seeing so I can answer them to you guys live. Small SUVs are huge. Big SUVs and trucks are not. The family-oriented vehicles are high right now. Regular cars that people don't necessarily need to have are not high. Really clean, ready-to-go cars are high. And then we're going into spring. I don't know where, I mean, Las Vegas, it's nice all year, I guess. But here, we only have, in New Hampshire, New England, I only have a few months of nice car seasons. So we start buying the convertibles and the toys like February, March during tax season. So when the snow melts, now we're into nice car season and the prices start to spike. Then I don't want to buy them at high. I want to buy them at low, which is kind of what we're doing mid tax season. We're paying more for cars that we can get ready to sell quickly.
Yeah. Brandon, what's your take on all of this? Why did we see that spike, and what do you think happens next?
Well, so, I mean, we won't go over prices again because we know why they're high. But one thing that I want to talk about too is that the prices are at all-time highs, but the quality of the cars that are coming to auction are at all-time lows. Because of interest rates being so high and new cars being so high, people are not trading in their good cars. Why would you trade in a paid-off nice car and then go get yourself a $700 a month payment? I mean, people aren't doing that right now. They're not trading up. So this high quality stuff that we used to see at auction just because people would want a brand new car, it's not coming to auction anymore. And then you have these franchise dealers, because inventory has been scarce, the good stuff, probably the stuff that Lucky buys, the nicer stuff that Craig buys, the franchise dealers are keeping that stuff now. So you're not seeing a lot of that stuff turn up at auction that's ready to go, like Craig's talking about. It's bringing stupid money when it comes. But even so, we're not going to see a lot of that ready stuff anyway, because the franchise dealers are going to keep it for themselves because they can get such a premium on it, and they're not giving anything on these trade-ins. So they're going to make so much money keeping that car versus sending it to the auction.
What are your thoughts, Pops?
Well, you know, from when I have conversations with my dear friend Chip, there is just, as he likes to remind me, there's just a shortage of quality used cars. And even though they know that they have to pay too much for them, they are thinking, since they're a large franchise dealership group, that they'll use the used cars that they're paying too much for as a loss leader to get people into the dealership. They realize that banks aren't lending as freely as they had been, and that if they're buying a car at the retail level at the auctions, and they are, well, they can't really sell it for more than that retail price because the banks aren't going to finance it. So they're willing to take small losses up front or very limited profits up front on their on some of their pre-owned stuff, with the hopes of making some of that back in the back end in finance. And I mean, you know, I've been around for a long time, and I don't ever recall a market as consistently unusual as what we have seen for the last 3 years. You know, I got the spike after COVID. I understood that because of the shortage, but I don't understand this new fresh spike. I don't understand, with interest rates going higher and banks limiting what they're willing to finance, why pricing hasn't come down. None of it really makes sense to me. But Brandon has an idea, so go for it.
The problem is, because new cars are so expensive, rates are so high, it's pushing people that would buy new cars into used cars. So used car demand has to go up when new car demand goes down. And when new car demand goes down, you get less trade-ins, meaning there's less supply for used cars. Supply and demand, prices have to go up if the demand for the used vehicles go up.
So if I hear you correctly, if I read between those lines, what you're really saying is manufacturers have to bring back less expensive inventory for new car customers to buy so they can remain new car customers.
Or rates have to go down.
Sorry, I didn't want to chime in. I wanted everyone to get in their thing, but no, I mean, you guys hit it nail on the head. Is I've talked to multiple franchise stores, and ever since they started letting these franchise dealers sell more of their used cars where they wouldn't get in trouble, I used to buy a lot from a number of auto groups here in Vegas. They're not selling anything. They're retailing everything at 150, 160, 170% LTV, stuff that us small independents can't even do. So they're keeping everything. But then on top of that, they're getting notifications from all their manufacturers that they're putting out less new vehicles this year and following next year. So it's okay for them to sell more used cars. And so now this traditionally just keeps that supply down, that demand high, and then funneling these people back into overpaying for cars. It's not the consumers, it's really the dealerships and the banks. I know Cox Automotive, I don't want to sound like one of those conspiracy people, but like what they're doing with the price inflection with Manheim, when I run Kelley Blue Book and MMR is like wholesale Kelley Blue Book is, or retails that is like what wholesale of MMR is, it's ridiculous. Like the banks use Kelley Wholesale Blue Book or Black Book or NADA for lending. So it's just getting out of whack. And I think something needs to happen quickly because these franchise stores, I know they're not going to be able to sell a lot of these overpriced units. They were buying cars from me like crazy. They stopped last week. I guarantee you I'm going to see some of those cars coming back. So I think this is just a temporary influx of pricing. I promise you in the next 45 days, we're going to be talking right like we were before, a traditional 3 to 5% to hopefully by the end of the year, we'll get back to 2019 prices.
Lucky to add to that as well, we're talking higher interest rates on new cars that are $70,000, $80,000. You want to buy a Suburban or a Ford Lightning for that matter at a significantly higher interest rate. People they're not going to do it. So you're just going to make the decision to go elsewhere, buy something pre-owned. You still want leather. You still want your nav. You still want your options. What are my other choices? I'm going to buy pre-owned now, which bumps the used car prices up, which you guys have tackled a couple times, but that's the idea. I'm not going to go spend $100,000 on a Ford Lightning when my interest rates is going to be through the roof. The payment is unaffordable and what my first mortgage was.
All right, quick question. First trivia question of the night for our dealers, our auto experts. We'll do it in the chat as well. Pops, I know you know this, but Brandon, Craig, Lucky, what do you think the average APR is on a used car loan right now? This data comes from the beginning of March from Cox Automotive. Lucky's got the answer. Let's hear from Brandon and Craig first, then, because that was a competent hand raise, so I don't want that to influence. Brandon, what do you think?
Caveat, does this include like buy here, pay here interest rate?
Only financial institutions, I promise.
Yeah, so let's say 16%.
We're going 16% for Brandon. Craig, what's your guess?
I was hoping it was lower than that. I think it's at 12.4.
We got 12.4 from Craig, 16 from, this is not Price is Right, so winner does not have to go under. Lucky, what do you think it is?
I was going to say 12.5, but I'll go 12.9.
12.9. And Pops, while I'm pulling it up on the screen, would love for you to let us know what it is.
It's a little over 14%.
It's just about 14%. Yeah, I don't have it quite queued up, but this came out of Cox Automotive's weekly update for the first 13 days of March. They had the average APR on a used car loan at 13.96%. We spent some time actually playing around with our monthly payment calculator, and that makes a huge difference when you're buying a vehicle. But it actually leads me to want to pull something up on the screen. And I want to get the four of you discussing this. Let me pull this up very briefly, and we can talk through it. I don't know if you saw this infographic, gentlemen. The growing auto loan problem. We're actually going to pull it up nice and big here. There we go. This infographic came from the World Economic Forum. This is insane, gentlemen. Younger Americans borrowed more aggressively to purchase vehicles. This is the percentage of income that someone is putting towards their car payment. Gen Z or 18 to 29-year-olds are putting 31%. 1 in 5 Gen Z respondents say their car payment accounts for more than 20% of their after-tax income. So we've got younger people spending more and more and more to get into vehicles. And then we also have delinquency rates amongst young people spiking. This data shows for young people 4.3% severe delinquency over 90 days past due. When you start to look at this data broken down by credit tier as well, FICO credit score, it can look even more devastating. And so I want to ask this question to the group. Let me get this off the screen here. I want to ask this question to the group, and feel free whoever wants to jump in first. Do we have a systemic problem here? You talked about affordability of vehicles. We talked about quality used cars have gone away. And now looking at this data, we have a generation of people who have indebted themselves to try and drive something nice. Is this something from a price standpoint that's going to get fixed in the next, 45 days, like you said, Lucky, for a wholesale decline or price decline? Or is this something that we now are going to be living with for the next decade? Does this feel systemic is my question, I guess, for the group. Go for it, Lucky.
I mean, I unfortunately have some inside information. So when I'm going out and buying auto loan portfolios, for you guys that don't know or new to my channel, one of my jobs is I actually go to banks and they season papers 60, 90, 120 days, and they just service it and then they sell it off to another bank and they bundle it up and they sell it off as an asset. So I go to different banks purchasing this, buy here, pay here dealers. And what I've been seeing is that it's not a problem with the car pricing, it's with the car lending. My challenge, I keep going over and over again, it's all about the banks. Because at the end of the day, dealers, we can price whatever we want, but if the banks doesn't finance that amount that we want, we're not going to be able to sell the cars for what we need. So I believe this is all going to start with the banks. What I'm seeing from multiple banks all across the United States, they're slowing down tremendously. They're seeing about a third of applications coming in during this tax season compared to last year, which is really bad. And then on top of that, they're traditionally going back to the 120, 110% LTV model that traditionally made them stay on point with their lenders and everything else. Because what's currently happening right now is all these Generation Z and these other people that are buying these cars at 10, 15, 20% interest. Well, back in 2020, they could afford it when the rent was maybe $1,500. But due to inflation, now their rent is $2,000. They're no longer getting their stimulus money. Maybe they're back to the regular job and they're making maybe $2-3 grand a month. And now it becomes an affordability problem. And that's why these banks are trying to offset their risk. So for the next year or two, the rates are just going to go higher and higher to offset their risk because they got to make money from you, the next person buying it, so they can make up for the losses they're going to lose from these next people. I believe that as this trend goes up and it gets worse, you're going to start to see people do almost like they did in 2008, where they're going to walk away from their cars. Because if you owe $40,000 on a Dodge Charger and you go buy one at the dealership for $25,000, why are you going to still make payments on your $40,000 car? And this is kind of what I'm seeing going on. Banks no longer switching selling paper. A lot of my banks that I deal with, especially subprime, they stopped lending completely. They're taking a 6-month break until the market settles out, and then they're going to get back into it. So it's looking really ugly. But this is more of a complicated finance thing. But I love to hear everybody else's opinion.
Can I jump in real quick too and add? I feel like I'm just riding on your back after every time you say something, but you have great points. So a lot of this has happened when Ray, first of all, I have a question for Ray. Do you remember back in the 80s what car rates were back then?
Oh, absolutely. When they were 16, 17, 18%. Yeah.
That's exactly
I remember
what
that.
I was going for. So we're talking Gen Z. This is a generation that's never seen anything like that. They've never seen anything like 2008 where everything changed. Like I joined the working force in 2008 when the world collapsed. So now we have another generation that's happening. This is happening to again, that lived at home. They weren't able to afford homes. They couldn't go buy a house because houses are unaffordable. So when you can't buy a house, you live at home, you have a real job, you graduated college, you have an income. What's the first thing you do? You go buy yourself a car. You become an adult and you get yourself a car. You get a car loan. Well, the problem is glamorizing high car payments, which drives me nuts. If I see it on TikTok or any type of social media, when you go to the car dealer going, what's your car payment? $1,300. What's your car payment? $1,800. That's not normal. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. And the problem is when a generation before would have been able to save for an affordable house at a decent rate. A few years ago, the houses were unaffordable. Now they're even more unaffordable because the interest rates are higher. So I hope it's not just a continuous problem of, well, what else am I going to spend my money on? I'm just going to go buy myself a car and live with my parents and then have a high auto loan. And then interest rates keep going. And then, we're not changing the problem or fixing the problem.
And Craig, if I can, back in the 80s when the interest rates were 16, 17, 18%, well, the average length of an automobile loan was 36 months.
Right.
Okay. Which was hugely different than it is today when the average loan term is 72 months. And in many cases, people are signing up for 84 and in some cases 96 months. So, it's one thing to pay a high interest rate for 3 years. It's suicidal to pay a high interest rate for 6, 7, or 8 years.
Which also gives the manufacturers, the new car dealers, justification for these high prices. So it's not, hey, what can we do to reduce the price on this vehicle? It's what can we do to get this customer in the vehicle, which, again, isn't a problem solver.
No, not at all.
Oh, yeah. This one really blew my mind. I'm glad you brought up the 96 months. This struck a chord back in 2021 when they started talking about how they were going to extend rates to offset the overpriced values of what they're going to be lending on these cars. And a lot of these banks' magical ideas was going to 96%. There is a credit union, I won't say the name, it's in California. They were buying all these loans at 96 months because they wanted to get people in affordable payments and they wanted to take over the market. Needless to say, they're pretty much almost done now. I know their numbers or their books getting called in by Wells Fargo, but that's something that I pray to God never comes back because we need to stay at 72 months. Even 84 months needs to go away. A lot of banks that I'm dealing with, like Penn Fed, Navy Fed, a lot of these credit unions across the United States, Ally, they're slowly getting rid of these programs. When I bought my R8 a year ago, I got 1.9% for 84 months. I only financed it for 60, but now with the same credit, I actually have better credit, more income. They're trying to whack me at, I think, 8% for anything exotic because now they're going off their your emblem rate for exotic car. But anyways, long story short, it's ridiculous. I'm glad that they're slowly getting this away. 96 months is ridiculous.
When I started in the business in 77, I'll get off my soapbox in 1 second. The average car loan term was 24 months. Okay. And then slowly it crept its way to 36 months. And then 48 and 60 month loan terms became normalized because that was the way as car prices continued to go up to make the cars affordable on a monthly basis. So what I have seen in 40 some years of doing this, as opposed to addressing the root cause that the prices are too damn high, the banks have bailed out all the manufacturers by saying, we will just extend the terms so that the monthly payment can still seem affordable. Well, like Craig said, that doesn't solve the problem. That worsens the problem.
And I want to pull something up here because it's going to tie back in, Brandon, into the conversation, which is we have seen car prices go up. We have seen banks lend against values that may not have made sense. And we have seen a significant number of consumers put themselves in a financial position that is not that smart. And now I'm going to pull it up on the screen in just a second, but we're doing round 2 lightning trivia. How many repossessed vehicles were there in January and February? And to give you guys context here, this is something that my dad and I covered today. We got great new data that came out. Back in 2020, there were 1.64 million vehicles repossessed for the full year. 2021, it was 1.69 million. In 2022, it was 1.99 million. I'm just asking from January and February, so a reasonable guess might be a couple 100,000. Do you guys have any sense for how many vehicles you think were repossessed? And Brandon, I'll toss that to you first. I'll put you on the spot. And this one is prices,
what was the number from last year that you gave?
Yep. So last year was 1.99 million vehicles repossessed for the year.
I would guess double that.
So you would be saying something like
4 million.
So you think 4 million? So that would be in the first 2 months of the year, something like 500,000, 4 to 500,000 vehicles are getting repossessed. Lucky, what do you think? How many total you think we're at? What's the run rate for this year?
480,000.
480,000 so far repossessed. What do you think, Craig?
This is just a complete guess. Anything I say is an arbitrary number, but I'm going to go high and say it's in the millions. So I'll say over $1 million.
So we're tracking, gentlemen, we're tracking to have a run rate of nearly 3 million vehicles repossessed this year, which would be 1 million more than last year. And the data is pretty damning. We're at about 400,000 vehicles that have been repossessed already this year, just through the first, let me pull this up on the screen so everyone can see, just through the first 2 months. We've had 391,000 recoveries so far, but when you start to look at the run rate, that puts you at about 3 million with the expected total. And you've got here an incredible article from Auto Finance News. They interviewed an agency that does this type of recovery work for down in the Houston area, and they're just talking about how they're busier than they've ever been. And one of the things I'll pull up here, this is a quote, guys. Quote, "I'm almost at capacity, and we haven't even begun to feel what is going to be probably one of the biggest shifts since 2008. We're going to blow past 2008 numbers as far as repossessions go." That comes from the head of automobile recovery, one of these Houston-based recovery agencies that has on a daily basis about 200 recoveries, 200 repos. So part of the reason I bring this up, and I want to put the spotlight on you for a second here, Brandon, is this whole conversation I feel like ultimately ties together. And what I mean by that, let me get that off the screen. What I mean by that, Brandon, is we talked about car prices going up at the wholesale auctions because there's not enough quality wholesale cars. We talked about loan delinquency rates and flex culture and these people spending too much and the banks financing against it. And now, the third piece to this, we're now seeing the repossessions increase, something all of us, I think, have been keeping our eye on. What does that mean? What does that mean for our market? And what do you expect, now seeing this information?
So one thing I want to say too is that the numbers that you're looking at, they don't include like these mom and pop buy here, pay here shops. So
Correct.
Any of the numbers that you're seeing are going to be these higher end cars. They're not these $795 downs and pay $175 every 2 weeks. Because those cars are going to get repoed. They're just going to go pick them up and they're not reporting any data to anywhere. Bob's Used Cars is not, they're just going to go pick up the car. So a lot of the repos that are actually going to be in the market are coming from those type of places. So, I mean, that's the reason I said double the amount of repos or whatever, because a lot of the guys that I know that own buy here, pay here lots, when I've talked to, I don't even know what came on the screen. When I've talked to a lot of these guys that have the buy here, pay here shops, they're saying that their actual repo rates are double what they have been at this point of the year at any time ever. And a lot of times right after tax time, their repo rates will go up like crazy anyway, because these people will come in, they'll spend their tax refund check on the down payment and they can't afford the monthly payment. So they'll just go pick up the car a month later anyway. But it's even twice as much as it usually is at this time of year right now.
Can I jump in real quick? Did anybody not see this coming? I feel like between the five of us, we're the ones that are saying the sky has been falling for 3 years. It's inevitable. The banks were over lending for cars that were overpriced and add the interest rates, which we didn't expect. So it was just something that it was bound to happen anyway. And when I was going to the auction in 2020 and 2021, I was saying, and I know a bunch of you did too, this is ridiculous. Why is anybody paying this much for a vehicle? And it's because someone was buying it and then someone else was buying it and the banks were lending to it. It's just continuously feeding the problem that is about to happen. Maybe. I mean, when I have calls every day from somebody that wants to buy a vehicle. Yeah, sure. I'm thinking about trading in a car too. Okay, great. The first question is, how much do you owe on this vehicle? Oh, I'm a little in over my head. That's always the comment. Right. Oh, I paid a little too much for it. Now I have a little bit of negative equity. How much do you think? And it's always not little negative equity. It's lots of negative equity in their car, and they're trying to find ways to get out of that vehicle now. So it's not that they want to buy my Suburban. They want out of their higher price car to buy the Suburban that's less money to get out of their negative equity. So they're looking for those answers to get out of the cars they over purchased.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was just going to say, now, Pops, keep me honest. This has been going on for decades, right? It's just the magnitude, the scale here have changed a little bit.
Well, I think I think personally that it's gotten much worse 2 years ago. 3 years ago, as the prices started going up, the only way that was feasible was if the banks were willing to finance too much money on overpriced cars, and apparently the banks were. They went along with it. Okay, that was that. Lucky hit the nail on the head before. It's a banking problem. If the banks would have said no 3 years ago, the prices of these damn cars would have come down. The fact that the banks allowed it to go on as long as they have, and now they find themselves in an unenviable financial position, some are closing, it's their own damn fault. Okay. And 3 years ago, I said, these prices are not sustainable. And for 3 years, I kept saying these prices, this is not a sustainable situation, except for the last 3 damn years. It has sustained itself because the banks have allowed it to continue.
I can't tell if Brandon is giving you praise or if he was raising his hand. And you and Lucky, and now we've got whiskey involved too. You and Lucky are taking the conversation from here. Go for it.
No, I haven't even spoke yet, but that's why I wanted to jump in. But if Brandon wants to go first,
No. Go Lucky, and then I'll go after Lucky.
Go for it, Lucky.
No, this is not to sound mean, but like I remember this is what blew up my channel. When I made that repo apocalypse thing, people laughed. I had news outlets coming up to me, where did I get my data? And I kept telling them that I buy paper from banks, and I'm seeing how defaults are starting to mount up. And all these things had one thing in common. Loans originated from 2020 to 2022. And they just kept laughing, thought I was crazy, nuts. And I was screaming it from the hilltops. And then literally the first bank that started showing, Ally, Wells Fargo, started showing their numbers, started doing setting millions aside for loss prevention. Then it finally hit. And then it was like a media spree. I went on every single news channel screaming this. And it cracked me up because I recorded these videos about 6, 7, maybe even a year ago. And a lot of them are just starting to play now because the public is starting to see the fallout from all these banks' crazy lending. I mean, if you had a pulse and you wanted to buy a car, I can get you anything you want for 160, 170% LTV. Proof of residency? Don't need it. Proof of income? Don't need that either. As long as you have a big enough down payment, I would shovel whatever deal I could down your throat, and the banks were more than happy to take it because they kept figuring the money's so cheap, even if we lose out on a few $1 million, no big deal, we'll outrun it in the long term. But now that credit's getting more expensive, they can't keep lending. That wheel is basically slowed down, and that's why I keep saying at the end of the day, it's all going to come down to the banks. And what they're experiencing now is record high defaults. And I remember a year and a half ago when I made that video, it's probably still every week. It's one of my most watched videos. I think it's over like 1 million views now, but people are freaking out because now it's finally come to fruition. So it's funny that all of us are like, hey man, it's bad. This doesn't make any sense. And I think that was like my favorite claim to fame was the fact that the banks are just being stupid right now. But anyways, I'll go ahead and shut up and I'll let Brandon know.
I want to pull you up, Brandon, but I just want to, for the record, my dad and I have never made a video about this, nor have we ever used a clickbait title to talk about it. So no, you're up, Brandon. Yep.
So here's my worry, and I would love to hear from Craig and Lucky on this same topic, is that so these people last year, I like to use an F-150 last year as an example all the time. So the MSRP was $70,000. A lot of these dealers were charging dealer markups. We've seen $30,000. So this customer gets into the $70,000 truck last year for $100,000, and they're going to put down the minimum amount payment that they can and just start making payments. So now a year later, that truck's going to be worth 20% less. So that truck is now, the value of it's $56,000, but this consumer still owes 80 grand on this truck. So now what happens? Do people walk away from vehicles? I think Ray had a different opinion than I did last time me and him talked about this, but I would be very curious to hear what Lucky and Craig have to say about this.
Go for it, Lucky.
I'm sorry. It's like hot on my mind, but last few months we've been talking about how like the repos are going up and vehicle values are going down. But last month, January and February were the first months where the repo rates were going down, but the book was going up. And people kept asking me, well, if defaults are going down, repos are going up, why aren't they collecting more cars? Why aren't the cars getting cheaper? I've seen banks actually go out of their way now to not repo a car because they're getting such low deficiency or such high deficiency numbers. So if they go repo this car from, Mr. Smith, and like you said, that F-150, they owe 70 grand, and they take it to the auction, and me and Craig bid on it for 45,000, 50,000, they have to eat that, deficit of.
They don't want the car back. They don't want the car back.
No, and so now banks I've never seen this before, but banks are literally calling people, hey, can we push a payment back? Can we lower your interest? I've seen them be more aggressive to not take the cars back, because usually banks, they want to protect their collateral, they want to get it back, eat the loss, and keep moving on. But this is the first time I've ever seen in 20 years where they're actually going out of their way to not repo as many cars.
I'm looking forward to Lucky's repo apocalypse, because the prices need to be regulated again anyway. They need to come back down when we have a surplus of repossessions. By the way, repossessions are some of the filthiest, nastiest vehicles I've ever purchased and tried to recon. It's disgusting what some of these people do. But I'm looking forward to them coming out. So we have a surplus of vehicles again, and I don't mind getting my hands dirty. And I say this a lot, and I think you guys would agree with me, is we are on the ground floor of the economy. I see when people are spending. I see when people are tightening their budgets. I see when they're buying a cheap car or they're buying a Corvette. If they're buying a second vehicle, things are good. If they're selling their second vehicle and buying themselves a Civic or a Camry, they're starting to think otherwise. And I see how people are spending not in the auto industry, which affects our entire economy. So I think all of us have seen things coming for a long time before anyone else would, because one of the first things you do, what do you need? You need a car, you need home, you need food. So if you have food and you have a home, the second car is a luxury, and what you're driving isn't as necessary as where you're going or how you're getting there.
So what's your take, Pops? I feel like you and I have been on this story since day one, and we have a really interesting perspective here. You're no longer in the business. It's interesting. I'm surrounded by a bunch of guys who have an incredible amount of knowledge about the auto industry. My only perspective is to the community that we have. And it seems like people are simply getting fed up. They don't want to pay these high prices. They're going to wait until prices do come down. What's your take on this entire environment, the three core pieces we've hit on tonight?
Well, it's not sustainable, damn it. It still feels like it's not sustainable. And, with banks finally having to bite the bullet, so to speak, and really look at their lending practices and what they've allowed themselves to fall back into. The hope would be that somewhere in the not too distant future, prices will come back to earth. Will prices come back to pre-COVID times? I don't know. Every time I've looked into my crystal ball, I've been wrong every damn time, because as I keep saying, I keep basing it on historical data and historical norms. And we just have not, for the last 3 years, been living in a normal time. So yes, at a certain point in time, there's going to be a crash. There just has to be. When that time is, I have no idea anymore. I really don't. I have never been so flummoxed by what I see happening on a daily basis in the automobile industry as I am today. And these three gentlemen, I admire you for being actively involved in it. All Zach and I do is we give advice and voice our opinions. You folks are actually out there living it, working it, doing it on a daily basis. I am ever so thankful. I am entirely out of that.
Don't sell our team too short, Pops. We got a good group of folks that help a couple thousand people a month buy cars, which is incredible.
Yeah.
Hey, can we wrap on this note, gentlemen? Because I just want to acknowledge and ask everyone that's with us, a couple thousand people, can we please just get a thank you to Craig, to Brandon, to Lucky, and to my father, my dad, Ray. This has been awesome. Like, if I didn't have to go through each of your agents to get a hold of you, I would ask that we do this more often, but I know you gentlemen are busy. I know getting you booked on the calendar was difficult. No, but seriously, just a huge thanks to each of you for doing this. And I just want everyone to show their appreciation. You guys have taken time out of your day. You've dealt with my email threads you got on here. So we all love seeing the messages come through. We all thank you for that. I want to try and end today's first ever CarEdge Auto Expert Roundtable Forum on a high note. And so I'll kick it off, but then I want to hear from you, Craig, you, Brandon, you, Lucky, and Pops. You can take us home. What's the good news right now? What is the good news? And I'll start here. We've seen strength of offer from the Carvanas of the world for whatever reason, even though they're selling their bonds now at 52 cents on the dollar, which was news that came out today, which is insane.
It was at 34 cents at one point, so that's good.
You guys got to teach me how to make that math pencil. We have seen strength of offer. If you're going to sell your car to Carvana, CarMax, EchoPark, we've seen strength of offer go way up. We're now telling people, hey, if you got an extra car sitting around, evidently for whatever reason, it's worth a lot of money. So there's my good news. You can sell a car for more money today than you could have a couple weeks ago. You got to replace it. That's still difficult. Craig, what's your good news? Whether it's market related, one of your subscribers, someone you recently sold a car to, what's your happy note to end today's show?
Good news is I'm still here, and so are you guys. I mean, if you're smart, again, I'm going to say it. I feel like we are Chicken Little. The sky is falling. If you look at our thumbnails, it's the world is ending always, yes. Right? But we're still here. I'm still in business. There's still food on my plate. I can still afford the ridiculous sports that my kids participate in. So if you play it smart and you don't overextend yourself, ask me the same question next year and see if I have the same answer. But if you play it smart and don't overextend yourself, you're going to be okay. It's just the people that were making nonsense moves for a long period of time got themselves in trouble or are in trouble or will be in trouble. I'm still in business. People are still going to need cars, whether they're up here or whether they're down here. So I'm going to finish with what I always say in my videos is you win some, you lose some. I just have to win more than I lose.
Love it. Brandon, what about you? What's your good news to end tonight's first ever CarEdge forum?
Yeah, so I had a buddy at an auction the other day. He came up to me and said, man, I see all of your titles. You don't ever have anything good to say, and you should try to do some positive videos. And I'm like, well, I mean, look around at the used car market. There's not much good here. And I mean, he just kind of sat back. He said, you know what? Yeah, you're right. I said, but you know what? We're still in business. We're still making money. We can still sell cars. You can still find cars out there that you can sell and give reasonable prices to customers. There's still money in the system right now. And I mean, just say exactly what Craig was saying. We have a business and it's still rolling and we're still making money, and we're maybe making less money than we could if prices were better, but we're still making money. We still have employees that we're supporting. And we're still being able to give you guys help on YouTube. So, I mean, God's good.
Love it, Brandon. Lucky, what's your positivity to end tonight's show?
You know, I always like to say more millionaires are made in a recession than any other time. And this is true. This is opportunity not only for dealers like ourselves, but new people that want to get in the industry, also consumers that are looking to purchase a car. I would say really negotiate. Now is a great time because a lot of these dealers after tax season, they're going to be stuck. Make some offers. Don't be afraid. If you're a new car dealer, get started in it. Watch all of our channels. You're going to hear us over and over again. We make mistakes. We screw up. Listen to our mistakes. Don't laugh. Watch so you don't lose the same amount of money. But I think that everything is actually going, I hate to say it, kind of as planned. And I'm very excited. My goal for my channel for this year is to pretty much double the size, not only my viewership, but I have a buy center, which I'll tell you guys offline that I'm going to be doing. And my goal is to literally just double the size of what I'm doing now, because while everybody else is freaking out and running away and closing down their dealerships, my goal is to try to eat up as much market share. And I think these gentlemen alongside me, after we go off this call, I think they should definitely do the same thing. But I want to hear from the wonderful man, Mr. Ray, to see what his thoughts of how this year is going to be amazing.
All right, Pops, what's your positivity?
The good news is that if you're willing to work at it as a customer, as a consumer, if you're willing to put in time, effort, and energy, there are still deals that can be found and still deals that can be had. So it's not all doom and gloom. It's certainly not peaches and cream at the moment. But if you're willing to put in the time, effort, and energy, you'll still be able to find some value out there. You just have to remain diligent and patient. So, hey, you know, for some folks, there's never going to be a better time to sell a car. And for other folks, there'll never be a better time to buy a car. It's just stay diligent.
Well, gentlemen, Pops, I admire you. I respect you. I feel so proud that we got to do this together. Craig, this is the first time we've ever done anything on YouTube together. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for trusting us, coming on live of all things. Craig and CarEdge, Craig and Lucky, Craig and Brent, we've never worked together. So Craig, thank you for having that trust in us. Brandon, it's always a pleasure to have you on the channel. You're invited back anytime. Craig, obviously the invitation's extended to you as well. Lucky, we've been able to get to know each other over the past year. Very proud of what you've been able to do on your channel. And gentlemen, thank you for trusting me to even be willing to do this. Tens of thousands of people are going to end up watching this, taking a lot of value out of it. And we have an incredible community here. We all share a lot of viewership, people who want to be informed and empowered. And I'm really proud to be here with each of you. So thank you for taking an hour out of your day. Thank you for doing this with us. Please check the links in the description. Craig's channel's there. Brandon's channel's there. Lucky's channel's there. We really thank them for taking the time, and hopefully we can do this again sometime soon, guys. Thank you so much.
Guys, thanks for doing this all together. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Zach.
See you in
Thanks for
30
joining, everybody.
No, you guys are all talking over each other. You did so good the whole damn show. No. Good night, everyone. Thanks for being with us.